Once you start realizing it is a great power, you can communicate with it, you can connect with it. Anything as simple as just walking through a garden, seeing the flowers, touching the trees, watching a beautiful sunset, watching the waves come in and caress the beach. All of it is part of God. It's all part of the source. When you open up to this, to the beauty that's all around us that we're just too busy to see, it's all there, and it all is God. How can anyone say there isn't a God whenever you can see it all around you? Every tiny thing is alive. It cannot exist without God, without the source. If the person would open up to this and start seeing it, and really looking at it for the first time with new eyes. Something so incredible as even a blade of grass, a flower. And you can even go and hug a tree and feel the energy from it, because it is alive. And it's all part of the Creator. And as we're part of the creators, we are also creators ourselves. Once you realize this, you can create anything you want in your life, because there's no difference. You remember Jesus even said in the Bible, these things I do, you can all do, and more. There is nothing special. We all have these abilities. We just don't realize it, and we put it in the background. It's there for anyone. Just open up to it and believe. Believe you can do this. If you believe you can't, you can't. If you believe you can, you will. It's all in the belief system.
I'm just a maverick scholar, I don't have a degree. I'm not an expert. I'm constantly learning and growing as this process goes. I'm learning from people that are more intelligent than myself, who email me, or I read voluminously. I'm always reading books, a wide variety of books, reading websites, updating stuff, creating new articles, correcting things that weren't quite right or whatever, So, there's nobody standing over me with a big stick. But at the same time, I want to make my work as perfect as possible. And, there's always going to be things that you're going to change. This is a moving collage. It's like this thing in front of you is like a chimera, it's like a kaleidoscope. You have to see it from many angles. You've got to walk around it multiple times to find out its hues and its colors and its shapes and its forms. And just like the eye can be deceived, so can the mind. We can be wrong. Or we can be seeing something myopically one year, and then we have greater clarity on it the next. So, of course, there's a great responsibility there, and I always try to update my work and correct things and add new aspects, and branch it out. It's a real task. But it's a journey. We don't have all the answers. And we're also historically in a very young time when it comes to this particular kind of thought pattern. Because before, when we had Orthodox religion and we weren't allowed to think, we weren't allowed to travel away from our villages, there was no way that you could be independent. If you did, you ended up in jail or worse. So we are in a very, very, very recent times. We have the great privilege of having that level of Uranian freedom, mercurial freedom, to even ask some of these questions and go about getting the answers. And that's training, that's patience, that's time, that's deliberation. You're on the track of a predator. You're on the trail of a criminal. And therefore it is absolutely the same as a hunter. He's got to know the terrain. He's got to sit out on the cold. He's got to learn about his predator. He's got to know that his predator is also watching him. He's got to learn almost to think like a criminal. It's a tremendous journey. It's not for lazy people. It's not for people who have given up their power, you see. It's not for people who just want to be running away from themselves and into all sorts of entertainment. It's not for pedantic people who go, you must get it right first time. where are these guys coming from? You know what I mean? Who are they to wave a big stick over anybody or piss on this knowledge like it's some dog trying to territorialize an area? They don't own knowledge. Nobody owns knowledge. Knowledge is for all mankind, and it's evolving as it percolates down through each individual human consciousness. Each person has the right to have a different angle on a certain thing. That's what makes it a beautiful parliament of voices. As we said, the bane of the world that is coming is the world of consensus and uniformity and conformity. This regimented knowledge, this regimented attitudes. Don't we see that all over the world? So in this area, which is occult, which is esoteric, which is alternative, we don't want any of that. We want to be able to make mistakes because we realize there is really no such thing as a mistake. There's just a challenge. There's just a obstacle to get over. There's just a way to, another veil falls from your face, another lie, gets blown. It's a wonderful, it is a meditation. It is the meditation. Because we're not, like we said in Architects of Control, we're not gaining knowledge, we love knowledge. We love it. We have a relationship with it, like we have with a person. I love my books. I love this subject. I love the people who are also studying this. It's a tremendous journey. It's what, I feel I've been on this planet to do. So it's my dharma. It's what I'm meant to do. I don't want to be a follower. I don't want to listen to lies. I want to find out what's going on. But you are walking in the dark. You are walking in an area where you can easily trip and fall and really, hurt yourself. But you see, ultimately, that's the road that I want to go on. That's the road I want to follow. And the pitfalls, I will take it because otherwise I wouldn't be on that road. If I wasn't able to take the flack, I would have given up years ago. You know what I'm saying? So, and as I say, I give the perfect right to any detractor or any other, party. They want to come and do something about what I'm doing. They have the freedom to do that. I'm not taking it away from them. I do what I do. They can do what they do. It's as simple as that. I'm not frightened by those people. And I'm not really any real major threat to them, as a matter of fact. Because they also have the choice to change their ways if they want. But I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And there's not a force on earth, nor in the sky, that will change it. This is what I'm doing. Nothing on this earth can ever change it. All the sacrifices have already been made. The pain has already been gone through. All the resistances I've had to put up with in 40 years. I've already done it. I've already lived the majority of my life, and this is what I want to be doing. I just wish I could have actually been doing it a lot earlier without all the resistances and bullshit, that I had to put up with. But now that that is somewhat removed, I get on with the game that I want to be doing, just like anybody else who's passionate about what they're doing, playing the cello, playing the violin, working with computers, whatever. You have to do it for the love of it, the passion of it, not because it's a drudgery.
The function of the Zen teacher is to put his students in all kinds of situations where in the normal course of social relations they would get stuck. Because we are caught up in a certain way of discourse, which the language game that we play, and the social games, the production games, and the survival games that we play are good games. But we take them so seriously that we think that that is the only important thing. And this is to unstick us from that notion and realize that it would be just as good a game to drop dead now as to go on living. Is a lightning flash bad because it lives for a second as compared with the sun that goes on for billions of years? You can't make that sort of comparison. Because a world of lightning goes also with a world where there's a sun, and vice versa. So, long-lived creatures and short-lived creatures go together. That's the meaning of that saying. Flowering branches grow naturally, some short, some long. So, this then is a scene in a Zen community where spontaneous behavior is encouraged within certain limits. And as the student becomes more and more used to it, those limits are expanded until eventually he can be trusted to go out on the street and behave like a true Zen character and get by perfectly well. You know what occasionally happens on the street when two people are walking down the sidewalk straight at each other, and they both decide to move to the right together, then to the left together, and they somehow get stuck. They can't pass each other. Zen teachers will pull just exactly that sort of stunt when going down a path and meet one of their students, to see if they can get him in a tangle, and can he escape from it. And you will find in everyday life that there is a very clear distinction between people who always seem to be self-possessed and people who are dithering and nervous and don't quite know how to react in any given situation, always getting embarrassed because they have their life too strongly programmed. You said, this is a common marriage argument. You said you would do such and such a thing at such and such a time. Now you've changed your plans. Not that the change of plans really caused any inconvenience, but just the feeling that when you say you will do something at a certain time, you ought to do it at that time, come hell or high water. So that's being very unadaptable. That's being a stone kind of sticky thing. If it after all doesn't matter when we do it, and somebody is offended because the time has been changed, that's simply because they are attached to punctuality as a fetish. So, you see, we spend an awful lot of energy trying to make our lives fit images of what life is or should be, which they can never possibly fit. So, Zen practice is in getting rid of these images. But it's so explosive socially to do that. And it so worries people. They get vertigo, they get dizzy, they don't know which end is up. Now you know in the same way that we have this in our culture, certain people who are comedians, who know how to make jokes and gags in a completely unprepared situation, face them with anything, and they somehow come through. So that is exactly the same thing in a special domain as Zen. Only the master of Zen does this in every life situation.
And I start to be aware of my peaceometer. How peaceful am I? Giving it a number from 1 to 10, just a skillful means, that's all. And knowing what makes my reading on the peaceometer go down. What is the cause of peace? What disturbs the peace? My mindfulness is now being focused on the experience of peace. Getting to know it like a good old friend. Peace is a very delightful object to focus on. You can't force focusing on peace. It destroys it when you force anything. You let it come to you. You let it be. And it grows. Inside that experience of peace, it always happens for me anyway. I become aware of my breathing. The breathing is like enclosed in a bubble of peace. It's the air going into my body. The used breath coming out. So simple. It's all I have in this moment. I have no goals or aspirations, nothing to try and reach. That causes lack of peace. Instead I have contentment. Just happy to be here. This is good enough for me. So I can delight this experience of the breath happening now. Like being on an inner holiday. An inner, not 5-star, billion-star resort inside. Just watching part of this delightful breath happening now. And not disturbing it. The more I let it happen, the easier it is. If I try and do something, it disturbs.
If you want a picture of the future, imagine a boot stamping on a human face forever. The moral to be drawn from this dangerous nightmare situation is a simple one. Don't let it happen. It depends on you.
When you go through the level of ridicule that I did in the early mid-90s, one of two things happens. Either it destroys you and you withdraw from the world, or you let go of the prison that most people live in, which is the fear of what other people think. Most people are not living their lives. They're not living who they are. They're living what they think others think they should be. And therefore, they're living a lie. They're living someone else's version of them. What happened to me as a result of that massive ridicule is that I let go of the fear of what other people thought. And when you do that, it's indescribable what that does. What I did was let go of that fear of what other people thought of me. And the freedom is indescribable. Because like I say, you don't have the mental gymnastics. How do I put this so they won't think I'm crazy? What do I leave out so they won't think I'm crazy? You reach this point where this is me, and I don't give a damn if you think I'm crazy. Other people's reaction to me. I completely respect their right to respond as they choose. I have a right too, not to be affected by it. When we say something about someone or do something about someone, we think that that's making a statement about the someone. It's not. Every time it's making a statement about us by what we are, by what we say and what we do. But people don't see that. And this is why people don't see so often that they are mirrors of that they rail against. So you have people who rail against the system, who think they are anti-establishment, who are actually doing exactly what the establishment wants, which is to silence the population. When you've got the progressive anti-establishment mentality saying to government, he must be silenced, she must be silenced, and the government and the corporate world and the establishment are going, yes, we would be delighted to do that. So it's this mirror, this inversion where people perceive themselves in a certain way, but actually act in a way that's the very same as that they rail against. So they'll talk about fascists. We're anti-fascists. All right, you're anti-fascist, right? So what do you want to do? We want to silence these people. That's what fascists do. You know, they can't see it. That's the problem.
You once claimed that you have an ability to face unpleasant facts. Is that what you've demonstrated in 1984 by drawing an accurate portrait of the future?
I think that allowing for the book being, after all, a parody, something like 1984 could actually happen. This is the direction the world is going in at the present time.
Yeah, I've been warning people about cell phones for years. The smartphone is the new world order. This is how they're leading you into it. All they've got to do now is hook you up to it. All they've got to do now is hook you up to it. This is what they want to do with the vaccines and the hydrogel, hook you up to the biometrics in your phone. Hook you up to the biometrics in your phone. Which reads everything about you. Your phone, which reads everything about you. Your phone knows so much about you. It reads your blood pressure. So much about you. It reads your blood pressure. It knows when you're going up and down stairs because it's got a barometer in it. The air pressure changes as you go up and down. It knows when someone gets in the car with you. As you go up and down. It knows when someone gets in the car with you. It knows where you're going, it listens to what you say, it listens to what you're doing, it reads your facial expressions, like you say. It also looks at your fingerprints, takes your fingerprints whenever you're tapping on that little keyboard. It's also reading all your fingerprints. Yeah, I've been warning people about cell phones for years. The smartphone is the new world order. This is how they're leading you into it. All they've got to do now is hook you up to it. So, you know, these are insidious devices, and these are mass surveillance devices. And they've kind of led people into it and then taken away their real world connection. So the only connection you've got now is on that cell phone. They're even taking landlines out on that cell phone. You can't buy maps in road houses anymore. You've got to use your GPS on your phone. So all of these things and personal assistants, and they are reading your mind. It isn't just listening to your conversation, which they are doing. They're listening to all conversations. So this is a mass surveillance system, and the smartphone is key to the whole thing working. This is what they want to do with the vaccines and the hydrogel, hook you up to the biometrics in your phone. Which is why they've led us into this, which is why you should know. Which is why they've led us into this, which is why you should know. So this is a massive surveillance system, and the smartphone is key to the whole thing working. This is what they want to do with the vaccines and the hydrogel, hook you up to the biometrics in your phone. Get off Facebook, get off Twitter, get rid of your cell phone and stop shopping with credit cards, and you've completely undermined their entire system. You've thrown a huge spanner in the works. If people did that, they wouldn't be able to push this out. They wouldn't be able to roll it out the way they have. Just those four simple things. Don't ever shop with a credit card. Don't ever shop with a credit card. Get off social media, throw away your smartphone. If you can get an alter ego online, like use a different name which isn't your real name online, is another good thing to do. Those four things will completely undermine the system if you just do those four things. people should be doing it. Everybody should be doing it. Everyone should be thinking about this stuff. You only need a phone so you're in contact with people. You don't need to be surfing the internet and doing all your banking and all this shit. You know, if you need to ring your parents, or you need to ring your brother or sister, or your mother or father, or your husband or wife, or whatever, you need to be in contact. That's why you've got a phone. You don't need all this other stuff. So just get a little flip phone. You make phone calls and send texts on. Yeah, I've been warning people about cell phones for years. The smartphone is the new world order. This is how they're leading you into it. All they've got to do now is hook you up to it. This is what they want to do with the vaccines and the hydrogel. Hook you up to the biometrics in your phone. This is what they want to do with the vaccines and the hydrogel. Hook you up to the biometrics in your phone. This is what they want to do with the vaccines and the hydrogel. Hook you up to the biometrics in your phone. Yeah, I've been warning people about cell phones for years. The smartphone is the new world order. This is how they're leading you into it. All they've got to do now is hook you up to it. This is what they want to do with the vaccines and the hydrogel. Hook you up to the biometrics in your phone. So this is a massive surveillance system, and the smartphone is key to the whole thing working.
What is the Internet of Bodies, IOB, and how is it changing our world? This is a subject that I've been focusing on for years because it's so important. Indeed, it's the end game. This is a story. Have you heard the term the Internet of Bodies? That may conjure up a few thoughts that have nothing to do with the true nature of the term, but it's about using the human body as the latest data platform. At first, this concept seems quite creepy at first, but then when you realize the possibilities it creates, it becomes quite exciting. Here we explore what the Internet of Bodies is, some examples in use today, and a few of the challenges it presents. The Internet of Bodies is in effect connecting the human body, the human brain, to artificial intelligence and technology, which I've been saying is coming for such a long time. And here we have now it being more and more obvious that this is where it's going. This article says, when the Internet of Things, the Internet that connects to all these gadgets and technologies, everything from your fridge to your car, your smart meter, etc. When the Internet of Things connects to your body, the result is the Internet of Bodies, it says. The Internet of Bodies, I call it the Internet of Everything, is an extension of the Internet of Things. It basically connects the human body to a network through devices that are ingested, implanted, or connected to the body in some way. Once connected, data can be exchanged and the body and device can be remotely monitored and controlled. There are 3 generations of the Internet of Bodies that include, it says, body external. These are wearable devices such as Apple Watches or Fitbits that can monitor our health. Body internal, these include pacemakers, implants of various kinds, and digital pills that go inside our bodies to monitor or control various aspects of our health. Body embedded, the 3rd generation of Internet of Bodies, is embedded technology, where technology and the human body are melded together and have a real-time connection to a remote machine. Progress in wireless connectivity, materials and tech innovation is allowing implantable medical devices to scale and be viable in many applications. And it mentions that the most recognized example of the Internet of Bodies is a pacemaker, a small device placed in the abdomen or chest to help patients with heart conditions control abnormal heart rhythms with electrical pulses. And this is the thing that everyone should have at the front of their mind. if it's connected to the internet, it can be externally hacked. And all this stuff that they want to put on the body and in the body falls into that category. And what this article is describing is what I've been writing in the books for decades, which is that the plan is to get people hooked on technology they hold, then move them on to technology on the body, and then move them on finally to technology in the body, connected to AI to take over the human mind.
When you take us back to what we really are just a tiny spark. Learn everything there is to learn. What happens when you have learned everything it's possible to learn in this universe? There's other universes. There's other galaxies. There's other ways of life that you can't even possibly imagine. Because we came from the source and we are a part of it, and we will continue to be a part of it. It's a constant motion, it never stops. And it goes on and on and on, there is no end. It's a constant motion, it never stops. And it goes on and on and on, there is no end. What happens when you have learned everything it's possible to learn in this universe? There's other universes. There's other galaxies. There's other ways of life that you can't even possibly imagine. Learn everything there is to learn. Learn everything there is to learn. Well, what happens when you have learned everything it's possible to learn in this universe? There's other universes. There's other galaxies. There's other ways of life that you can't even possibly imagine. Learn everything there is to learn. Learn everything there is to learn. What is God? 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 Everyone in the world and every religion in the world sees God in a different way. What is God? 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 Everyone in the world and every religion in the world sees God in a different way. They all see it according to the way they've been taught, the way they believe. That doesn't mean there's any right, there isn't any wrong. It's just that our concept is so limited to what it really is. What is God? 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 Everyone in the world and every religion in the world sees God in a different way. What is God? What is God? What is God? What is God? God is so huge, it is so big, that there's no way we can define it, and there's no way we can enclose it in a box that we call religion. We call it the source. God is a name that we put on it, but it all goes back to the source. The source is the beginning of everything. What is God? 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 What is God?
So if a person believes that the earth is flat, you can't talk him out of that. He knows it's flat. You go out of the window and see it. Obviously it looks flat. So the only way to convince him that it isn't is to say, well, let's go and find the edge. And in order to find the edge, you've got to be very careful not to walk in circles, so you'll never find it that way. So we've got to go consistently in a straight line, due west, along the same line of latitude. Eventually, when we get back to where we started from, you've convinced the guy that the earth is round. That's the only way that will teach him. Because people can't be talked out of it. But now there is another possibility, however. Let's say we take as the basic supposition, which is the thing that one sees in the experience of Satori or awakening or whatever you want to call it, that this now moment in which I'm talking, you're listening, is eternal. That although we have somehow conned ourselves into the notion that this moment is rather ordinary and that we may not feel very well and that we're sort of vaguely frustrated and worried and so on, and that it ought to be changed. This is it. So you don't need to do anything at all. But the difficulty about explaining that is that you mustn't try not to do anything, because that's doing something. And how to explain that? because there's nothing to explain. It's the way it is. And if you understand that, it will automatically wake you up. That's why Zen teachers use shock treatment to sometimes either hit people or shout at them or create a sudden surprise. Because it is that jolt that suddenly brings you here. See, there's no road to here, because you're already there. And if you ask me, how am I going to get here? It'll be like the famous story of the American tourist in England, who asked some yokel the way to Upper Tottenham, the little village. The yokel scratched his head and he said, "Well, sir, I do know where it is, but if I were you, I wouldn't start from here." So you see, when you ask, how do I attain the knowledge of God? How do I attain nirvana, liberation? All I can say is it's the wrong question. Why do you want to attain it? Because the very fact that you're wanting to attain it is the only thing that prevents you from getting there. You already have it. But of course, it's up to you. It's your privilege to pretend that you don't. That's your game. That's your life game. That's what makes you think you're an ego. And when you want to wake up, you will. Just like that. If you're not awake, it shows you don't want to. You're still playing the hide part of the game. You're still, as it were, the self, pretending it's not the self. That's what you want to do. So you see, in that way too, you're already there. When you understand this, a funny thing happens. And some people misinterpret it. You will discover as this happens that the distinction between voluntary and involuntary behavior disappears. You will realize that what you describe as things under your own will feel exactly the same as things going on outside you. You watch other people moving and you know you're doing that. Just like you're breathing or circulating your blood. If you don't understand what's going on, you're liable to get crazy at this point and to feel that you are God in the Jehovah sense. Say that you actually have power over other people, so that you could alter what they're doing, and that you are omnipotent in a very crude, literal kind of Bible sense, see? And a lot of people feel that and they go crazy. That puts them away. They think they're Jesus Christ, that everybody ought to fall down and worship. That's only they got their wires crossed. They haven't been able to, this experience happened to them that they don't know how to interpret it. So be careful of that. Jung calls it inflation. People who get the holy man syndrome, that I've suddenly discovered that I'm the Lord and that I'm above good and evil and so on, and that therefore I start giving myself airs and graces. But the point is everybody else is too. If you discover that you're that, then you ought to know that everybody else is. Well, for example, let's see how in other ways you might realize it. Most people think when they open their eyes and look around that what they are seeing is outside. It seems, doesn't it, that you are behind your eyes. And that behind the eyes there is a blank. You can't see at all. Turn around, there's nothing else in front of you. But behind the eyes there seems to be something that has no color. It isn't dark, it isn't light, it's there from a tactile standpoint. You can feel it with your fingers, although you don't get inside it. But what is that behind your eyes? Well, actually, when you look out there and see all these people and things sitting around, that's how it feels inside your head. The color of this room is back here in the nervous system, where the optical nerves are at the back of the head. It's in there. It's what you're experiencing. What you see out here is a neurological experience. Now, if that hits you, and you feel sensuously that that's so, you may think that then therefore, the external world is all inside my skull. But you've got to correct that with the thought that your skull is also in the external world. So you suddenly begin to feel, well, wow, what a kind of a situation is this? It's inside me, and I'm inside it, and it's inside me, and I'm inside it. But that's the way it is. This is what you could call transaction, rather than interaction, between the individual and the world. Just like, for example, in buying and selling, there cannot be an act of buying unless there's simultaneously an act of selling, and vice versa. So the relationship between the organism and the environment is transaction. The environment grows the organism, and in turn the organism creates the environment. The organism turns the sun into light, but it requires there to be an environment containing a sun for there to be an organism at all. And the answer to it is simply, they're all one process. And it isn't that organisms by chance came into this world. Put it rather that this world is the sort of environment which grows organisms. It was that way from the beginning. Just in the same way, the organisms may in time have arrived in the scene or out of the scene later than the beginning of the scene. But from the moment it went bang in the beginning, that's the way it started. Organisms like us sitting here, were involved with it. You see, look here, let's take the propagation of an electric current. I can have an electric current running through a wire that goes all the way around the Earth. And here we have our power source. Here we have a switch. Right. There's the positive pole. Here's the negative pole. Now, before that switch closes, the current doesn't exactly behave like water in a pipe. There isn't current here waiting to jump the gap as soon as the switch is closed. The current doesn't even start until the switch is closed from the positive pole. It never starts unless the point of arrival is there. Now, it will take an interval for that current to get going, and the circuit is sort of going all the way around the Earth. It's a long run. But the finishing point has to be closed before it will even start from the beginning. In a similar way, although in the development of any physical system, there may be billions of years between the creation of the most primitive form of energy and then the arrival of intelligent life. That billions of years is just the same thing as the trip of the current around the wire. It takes its time. But it's already implied. It takes time for an acorn to turn into an oak. But the oak is already implied in the acorn. So in any lump of rock floating about in space, there is implicit human intelligence. Somehow. They all go together. So don't differentiate yourself and stand up against this and say, I am a living organism in a world made of a lot of dead junk, rocks and stuff. It all goes together. Those rocks are just as